Evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call to order the September 20th, 2023 meeting of the Council of City of Springdale. I would ask that you rise for the pledge and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
O God, who has taught us that we are members of one another, remove, we pray, from among us all distrust and bitterness, and grant that we, seeking what it is just and equal and caring for the needs of others, we may live and work together in unity and love. Amen.
Amen. All right, Ms. McNear, you do roll call.
Mr. Anderson. Ms. Gantos. Here. Mr. Hawkins.
Present.
Mr. Ramirez.
Present.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup.
Present.
Mr. Vanover.
Present. Council, before we go over the minutes, we have added a 5A, in that we have several police introductions. I don't know why they're here, but so anyway, with that. So this evening we have before us our minutes from our September 6th, 2023 meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Motion second. Discussion? All right, all those approving the minutes as published signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved with 7 affirmative votes. All right, Mr. Jones, Mayor Webster.
Well, thank you. We actually have introductions tonight. If you'll give us just a moment, Mayor, if you want to jump in there.
Let's have our new police chief come down and handle the introductions. This is Chief Butler, in case somebody has forgotten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first officer, Officer Tyler Knoll. Tyler, if you want to come down. Tyler's a 2019 graduate of Oak Hills High School. He holds an associate's degree from the University of Cincinnati, which he obtained in 2022. He just recently graduated from the University of Cincinnati Claremont College. We're extremely happy to have Tyler on board with us. Come on down out front, young man.
I guess, Brian, we're going to change the plans here. Huh?
We'll do the new officers. We want to introduce Officer Teague as well, and we'll swear.
Yep. Officer Andy Teague, if you want to come down. Andy is a homegrown product of Springdale. Graduated from Princeton High School in 1994. He attended the Police Academy in 1997. Worked for several agencies before landing at the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, where he worked from 2006 till 2023. Andy's a legacy. His father is a retired Springdale police officer. He worked here from 1976 to 1998. Andy brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to the department, which we are going to very much exploit. So, let the mayor start with the
Okay,
gentleman.
You want to step here in front? Sit in front of the flag. Okay, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, in your name,
I, Tyler Knoll,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will
the Constitution of America, the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Charter, laws, and ordinances of Springdale,
the Charter, laws, and ordinances of the City of Springdale,
and the regulations, orders, and procedures of the Springdale Police Department,
and the regulations, orders, and procedures of the Springdale Police Department,
and I will discharge the duties of the office of law enforcement officer
and I will discharge the duties of the office of law enforcement officer
to which I have been appointed
to which I have been appointed
to the best of my abilities.
to the best of my ability.
Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the charter laws and ordinances of the city of Springdale,
the charter, laws, and ordinances of the city of Springdale,
and the regulations, orders, and procedures of the Springdale Police Department.
and the regulations, orders, and procedures of the Springdale Police Department.
I will discharge the duties of the office of law enforcement officer,
And I will discharge the duties of the office of law enforcement officer,
to which I have been appointed,
to which I've been appointed,
to the best of my abilities,
to the best of my abilities,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Welcome aboard. Just one footnote, this young man happens to be second generation Springdale police officers. His father was an officer for many, many years, and happened to know him and work with him, and he's a good man. Where are we going next?
Lieutenant Scholes is a graduate of Wright State University, where he holds a bachelor's degree in urban affairs. Mike joined the Springdale Police Department in 2020. He's worked through in many assignments in the department. At each level, he has excelled in each position. He was promoted to sergeant in 2011, where he served as patrol sergeant for several years. 2014, he was assigned to the investigative section, where he oversaw the detectives from 2014 to 2022. Lieutenant Schultz was selected for lieutenant in 2022, was he? Acting in November. His experience has prepared him to take on these tasks, and he has filled open lieutenant spot since late last year. Mike is a wealth of knowledge, being here relatively a short period of time myself, and has helped me in this journey as we progress with the Springdale Police Department in the future.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, with your name,
I, Michael Schultz,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of lieutenant.
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of lieutenant
I will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the charter, laws, and ordinances of the city of Springdale,
the charters, laws, and orders of the city of Springdale,
the regulations, orders, and procedures of the Springdale Police Department,
and the regulations, orders, and procedures of the Springdale Police Department.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Welcome, Lieutenant.
Sergeant Justice. Sergeant Justice is a graduate of Macaulay High School in 2009. She attended Northern Kentucky University, where she received a bachelor's in criminal justice in 2013. Not one to rest on her laurels, she then enrolled at the University of Cincinnati, where she obtained her master's degree in 2014. Prior to coming to Springdale, she was a deputy with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office in the Corrections Division, correct? She served as a patrol officer in 2016 after graduating from the Ohio State Highway Patrol Peace Officer Academy. She was promoted to the rank of corporal in 2021 and then was selected now for this position. Mr. Mayor?
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, with your name,
I, Kayla Justice,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of sergeant
that I will faithfully execute the duties of sergeant
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the charter, laws, and ordinances of the city of Springdale,
the charters, laws, and ordinances of the city of Springdale,
and the regulations, orders, and procedures of the Springdale Police Department.
and the regulations, orders, and procedures of the Springdale Police Department.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Corporal Setters is a graduate of Coleraine High School in 1989, served with honor in the U.S. Navy for approximately 5 years. He graduated the Police Academy in 2006 and worked for the St. Bernard Police Department for 13 years before transferring to the city of Springdale. Derek came here in May of 2020 and has been a valuable asset to the team. Earlier this year, we had an opening for corporal, and Derek was selected out of a pool of candidates.
That's true.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, in your name,
I, Derek Setters,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of corporal
that I will faithfully execute the duties and
of the office
of
of
the office of corporal,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, defend, and protect the Constitution of the United States of America,
preserve, defend, and protect the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the charter ordinances of the city of Springdale,
charter ordinance of the city of Springdale,
and the regulations, orders, and procedures
the regulations, orders, and procedures
of the Springdale Police Department.
of the Springdale Police Department.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Welcome aboard.
Well, just a word of congratulations and welcome to the new ones to the family. Congratulations to the growth. It's always a pleasure when we have the police department here. Fills it up and it gives us that warm, fuzzy feeling. Mr. Officer Teague, I'm proud to say that grew up in our neighborhood. I worked with it, came on while his dad was still in service, so it's kind of neat to see that. And for disclosure purposes, my brother-in-law, cousin, is Corporal Justice back there, and he knew she had to be good because I know he is. So, but again, congratulations. It's always great to see all of you here. Thank you for your service and your time, and please be safe out there. Mayor Webster?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. When we were interviewing for a new police chief, I very distinctly remember us telling, especially Chief Butler here, that we were very proud of the talent that we had in our police department. We thought we had a lot of depth and a lot of potential, and we were looking for somebody to lead that group. And I think that with what we did here tonight with the new officers, I think we just added more quality to that depth. And I think that by promoting these people, it shows that we've got some great people in the ranks. And I think the police department has many great years ahead of them. So we're very proud of you guys and girls. Keep up the great work, and like Mr. Vanover says, stay safe out there. Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move into committee and official reports. First off this evening, Holman, Civil Service.
Before I get started, go ahead and leave so they won't. Yeah. I better wait. That's what I said. I'm gonna allow everybody to leave. Yeah. Yeah, I understand. I understand, Mr. Anderson. I understand. And you have to listen really, really well because it's gonna be brief. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of council. The Springdale Civil Service Commission did meet on September the 7th in the Springdale Municipal Building, and all members were present. In addition to the members of the Civil Service Commission, also present was Mr. Brian Yule, the Assistant City Administrator, along with Stephanie Morgan, Human Resources Administrator. A variety of different topics were discussed, but what is, I think, appropriate for tonight is to highlight that within the area of the Firefighter 2 EMT and the Firefighter 2 paramedic hiring process, we talked about options for physical agility testing, and having had that discussion, we concluded that it's necessary to keep the process moving. And so as a result, a physical agility test is planned for October the 19th for the firefighter positions as we continue to build up the ranks and continue with the staffing. So again, anyone out there seeing this, if you're interested, continue to show your interest by being part of the continuous process, which is through National Testing Network. Physical agility test 19 so kind within their fire department to allow us to use their facilities for the testing. We're looking at other alternatives in the event that that would not become available down the road, but so far things are working out, and we certainly appreciate their efforts. Also, within the police department, due to a recent resignation and also a retirement later this year coming up, a timeline for a new police clerk process was presented. And following discussion, Mrs. Darby made a motion to waive the testing requirements for the position of police clerk and also approve the timeline as proposed. That position, as most of you are probably aware, is a little tricky in the sense of the actual work, and as a result, it requires someone with a unique skill set in order to be successful in the position, and that's why we decided to waive the testing so that we could focus on the resume and focus on the skills. And with that, our next meeting is scheduled for October the 5th. Any questions?
Didn't see any lights.
Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, rules and laws, Ms. Gantes.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
Okay. Finance Committee, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met on September the 6th. All members were present. On discussion, we had a presentation from Chief Stanley and the Fire Department regarding request for a new tower or ladder truck. The cost of that would be approximately $1.8 million. Note that the price has doubled, I think, in the last 9 to 10 years from where it was. It is incrementally gone up every 3-4 years. The company that manufactures our current vehicle is out of business, has been out of business. So across the street at the firehouse, they're having to find ways to be MacGyver with regard to fixing things. And it's to a point where they need a new truck. So going through that, the build out is approximately 3 to 4 years from the point that that would be approved, if that's approved by council, and have time to go through and finance that or work through some of those billing opportunities. But the Finance Committee had gone through the presentation and thought that it was a good idea, would make the recommendation for council to consider the purchase of said vehicle. If there's any questions, happy to answer them to the point, or if there's anything else Mr. Ramirez has to add.
I just will add that with the $1.8 million cost, and as you mentioned, 3 years for a build-out, we do not have to pay for the device until we receive the product. So, and with the cost year over year, to order now, lock in that price, and not have to come up with the revenue until we receive the product.
You can pretty much count it. If we blink, it'll be a $2 million ordeal within 2 years.
Mayor Webster?
Well, as Mr. Ramirez just reported, we don't have to pay for this until we take delivery on it. So we're probably looking at maybe 3 years, four outside. So that gives us time to try to figure out how we're going to pay for this. I think, almost without exception, I think all the fire department in the past, fire equipment in the past, we've financed it over 3 years. I mean, this is an investment. Yeah, the finance, trying to seek those payments. And just a little side note, I can remember when we replaced the first one, $275,000. And we all fell out of our seats. We said, "You gotta be kidding me, $275,000 for a fire truck?" Well, $1.8 million today.
Right.
So needless to say, that was a few years ago.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the questions that come up at Finance was the length of the terms with regard to how long you could stretch it out. Mr. Williamson, Finance, our director there, has looked into it some, and they're obviously we can do 3, 4, and 5, and he said that there's even some that's offering 7-year, if that's something of interest to it. Again, we won't be making that decision again for a few years, but just as a heads up that he's feels pretty comfortable that we can go anywhere from 3 to 7.
Ms. McNear?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, and there is no deposit that's due during this 3 to 4 years while we wait. And again, as Mr. Jones has mentioned, that we can extend the number of years to pay for it. You know, who knows what the interest rates will be then. Hopefully, it's going to be something more reasonable than what the environment looks like today. But, you know, we can do something more creative. I say we, I won't be here, but, you know, something more creative. Perhaps we start putting some money aside for this because we know it's going to be a very large payment that's due. But, you know, we're just going to have to get creative. But if you think about it, this is a piece of equipment that we will have for a very, very long time. And if you also think about it, none of us are probably driving a 20-year-old piece of equipment. And the fire department does an excellent job of maintaining their equipment to the point that they do keep this equipment around, you know, for decades. And they try to maintain it to the point that they do MacGyver type of magic to keep the equipment going for as long as possible because they know the equipment is so very costly. And it gets to the point that, you know, the parts are no longer manufactured and they do, you know, create this magic to keep them going. So, you know, we want to make sure that we recognize the fact that they do keep these things going as long as they possibly can. But, you know, it comes a time that we just have to pay the piper and come up with the millions of dollars it takes, or we have to face the facts that we're not going to be able to maintain our own, you know, fire department, and we'll have to go to, you know, other means to maintain that type of a service. Thank you.
Mayor Webster?
Yeah, the other thing we talked about in the Finance Committee, and so don't be surprised if this issue surfaces. We could create a retirement fund, a fire engine debt retirement fund, and start putting money into there. And then we've got some money. I think we're going to have some money left out of the American Rescue Plan money that has to be spent by the end of the year. Now, the outlet there is we can just transfer it in a general fund and pay whatever we want out of it, or we could maybe earmark some of that money to go into this retirement fund, and then each year put something away so that once we get hit with the big bill, the $1.8 million, we've got something to offset that, some down payment at least.
All right. Didn't see any more lights, so Planning Commission, Ms. Weisskopf.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning Commission met on September 12th. We had 6 people in attendance. We swore in Michelle Miller, and we had Planet Aid Donation Center at 600 Kemper Commons Circle, and it failed 0 to 6. It was one of those donation boxes where you can put items, shoes and clothing and things like that. They wanted to put it in the parking lot of like Sam's, like where we had planned for the, well, where they had planned for the fuel pumps to go, like right next to the fuel pumps. And Planning Commission just did not feel like this was the location or the right place with it. With the U-Haul being right there, we were afraid that people would put big items like couches and chairs and things like that also out there, and that they wouldn't get picked up for days and days. And so that one failed 0-6. We had Pretzel Baron. Is that Deitch? Deitch. And that was at 1100 East Kemper Road, and that was a final development plan for the PUD. It's the development plan that came before us before, and it's pretty much exactly the same, and that passed 6-0. And then Wawa came with 2 different applications. One was for the site signage, and that was approved 6-0. And they also came for the Days Inn pole sign, because it's on their property, and they came and that was voted 6-0. They would keep it with the Days Inn and cleaned up and looking nice. And that is all that I have.
All right. Board of Zoning Appeal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board of Zoning Appeals didn't meet, so we don't have a report.
Okay, Board of Health, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Board of Health met last Thursday. It had been the first meeting after the big summer hiatus, so there are a lot of miscellaneous items to bring up. For Children program that we constantly are running. Of it, 300 vaccines were given to 100 kids over the summer. In terms of COVID, there are some numbers that have gone up. If you've been watching the news, you might have seen it. As far as we are hearing, the new variant isn't as dangerous as previous ones, and so we've had a couple of variants like that. The new booster is available, but the biggest thing the nurse wanted us to communicate is it's no longer free. If you don't have for that, but if you have and you want the new booster, you want to go through your doctor or go through a CVS type pharmacy to get that booster. As far as I'm concerned, the recommendations are still the same. If you have vulnerabilities, you're older, you have immune problems, then it's recommended. We didn't discuss the logistics or the recommendation of whether or not to get that booster because there's still a lot of gray area. It's a fresh new booster. There was another grant of $200,000 that the Board of Health gets to spend over the next approximately until December 2024. The Board of Health received some kudos from the Ohio Department of Health for a great job overcoming perceptions about HPV vaccines. And if you're familiar with HPV vaccines, there's a perception that it's just for people who are sexually active, where there's a ton of other benefits for HPV vaccinations. And as I said, the Ohio Department of Health gave some kudos to our local department for some great numbers in terms of distributing HPV shots. Food program update, White Castle is up and running after their remodel. Badmo's African Market on West Kemper is up and running. There's a new pizza place called Pizzeria del Tonino, and they need customers. And there were several members of the board that had gone there and said, great pizza, but we need to fill those seats. Sam's is offering sushi, and that's up and running. There's a mobile city with a license, and stories was that the old is now called Item. They'll be operating October 2nd, next to Papados. The last item, October 3rd, there'll be the Health Fair Business Expo where you can get chili and other things. And unless there are any questions, that's all I have.
Very good, thanks, sir. Capital improvements, Ms. Gantes.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
Okay. OKI, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. OKI board met on 9/14. There are items that we covered. The OKI did to get that put together with the conference and the go to the OKI website. You can see the entire plan there, and there's some neat might be interesting. There are also minor updates to the where OKI gives out money for our projects that we're oftentimes beneficiaries of. There were some minor updates to that. And the last thing worth mentioning is there was a presentation on regional demographics, talked about what's happening in terms of population count, ages in our region. That data is available for anyone that's interested in looking at data and looking at how age is shifting, how population is moving from the city to the rural or rural back. What else was interesting is during that presentation, Springdale was called out as a hot growth area, in the area, and they called out the, I don't know if they said experimental, but cutting edge or leading edge transitions from offices to living space as something that other communities should look into. So our apartment changes that are happening in the mall were both called out in the meeting as exciting growth for the region. So I thought that was fun. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mayor Webster, Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have a whole lot to report. Our SOS did start meeting again today. We took a summer vacation, as council does. Ours is 3 months. Yours is every other month. But anyway, so needless to say, the first order of business was looking ahead to our Christmas program, and something that's it's taking place. It's going to be very exciting. Our manager of our physical fitness facility, Elizabeth Johnson, last year initiated the Christmas Vendor Village, and I think we had 8 or 10 vendors in there, and it was very, very well received. As a matter of fact, I think we're going to have it outside, and the threatening weather drove us inside. So this year, we don't care what the weather's going to be. We're going to have it inside, and we can accommodate. No, she can accommodate 42 vendors, and she already has 14 signed up. So a third of the vendors have been taken already, and that's more vendors than we had last year. And so we're really looking forward to filling that up. It costs $50, and it goes from 9 to 3, isn't it? 9 to 3, so 6 hours. So we think that is going to be a good follow-up to the 5K. You guys run 5K. So that'll take place at 9 o'clock from 9 to 10, and then but this will last till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So so as you start making out your Christmas list, please keep the SOS in mind, and you'll be hearing more about that as we get closer. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, sir. Clerk Council Finance Director, Ms. McNair.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the general fund update through August 31st. For receipts, we have a net receipt through August 31st, based on a net receipt budget of $24.123 million. We have received $15.872 million, and that is based on 5 general fund receipt sources, which are earnings tax, real estate taxes, paramedic services, local government funds, and transient tax, for a subtotal of $14.620 million, which is 92%. For the general fund expenditures through August 30th, budget of $24.8 million, we have spent $14.297, and the balance through August 31st, 2023 is $8.202 million, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Administrator's report, Mr. Jones. Oh, Mayor Webster?
Yeah, can I amend my report?
Sure.
Thank you. We had an event take place today down at the community center, our State of City address, which I gave a few words. Andy Kuchna gave an update on what's happening in the economic development front. We had the developers of Merchant Row gave a presentation, a lot of slides. Very, very impressed with that. It's turned out to be a very nice development. We also had a few slides from the array up on Sheridan Lane, and that also looks very nice. So I think we're going to have about 500, or it's about 450 additional housing units when both of those are filled, and the occupancy rates are really going well. Both developers are very, very pleased. As a matter of fact, the one today, I know for a fact, is looking at other office buildings that they may want to convert to do the same thing. So I think it's a unique concept, and as they pointed out, it doesn't work in every vacant office building, but it's
and I think that it complements our other businesses. And if we can ever get Tri-County Mall off the dime there, I think it's really going to complement that development. So anyway, it was a very nice very nice luncheon. We had about 85 people there, I think. We had 3 or 4 of our council people there. A lot of our department directors were there, and a lot of business people. And so anyway, it was a nice affair put on by the Chamber of Commerce. Julie, good job, and looking forward to next year. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Administrator's report, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. We enjoy bringing folks in that either get hired with the city or get promoted. Brian and I get to spend a lot of time with the folks through the hiring process and promotional opportunity, but we hope that you enjoy that. This council always seems so supportive of us bringing them in, so we're going to continue to do that unless you tell us otherwise. We think it gives you a snapshot of the kind of people, the qualified folks that we're bringing before you, the qualities and backgrounds, and not just education, but experience and all the things they bring with that. I think the introduction the chief and the other department directors do is important and gives you, again, a little idea what you're hiring and what ultimately the residents, taxpayers are paying for. So I want to congratulate those folks that were either hired or promoted. And again, unless you tell us otherwise, we appreciate the support of the elected officials. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Yule, have anything? Okay, Law Director's report, Mr. Braun.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
Okay, Engineer's report, Mr. Riggs.
Thank you. So we're making progress on the Northland Boulevard reconstruction project. We're in the right-of-way phase. We have the appraisals. They're currently under review. Hopefully we'll get the review completed this week and get them signed. Then offer letters can go out next week, and then we can start beginning the negotiations and acquiring the right-of-way. The goal is to have all the right-of-way acquired by mid-July. We're also working on an OPWC funding application. Applications are due September 29th. We're hopefully going to be able to submit that by next Friday, so a week early. We're looking to request a little over $1 million, and the goal of that grant application, because you may remember that we submitted one to SORTA a few months ago for $2 million. With the OPWC grant application, the SORTA application, if successful, and all the other grants that we received, the city would have potentially no money for construction of the improvements. So that was our goal all along. Hopefully, we're moving along, and I believe that we will be able to achieve that. I'll know more next month. The State Route 4 urban paving project, I'm sure everyone's noticed. Pretty much that work is at least the intermediate asphalt's down. They have the final asphalt surface and pavement markings to go, but that's going to be wrapped up sometime in October. Very similarly, the State Route 747 urban paving, they're in about the same spot, just looking for final asphalt and pavement markings to go down, but that project is going to be wrapped up by the end of next week. At least that's what the contractor is telling us. The Sheraton Lane reconstruction project, that project is substantially complete. There's a few punch list items remaining, but that project is open. And this afternoon I learned about the Community Center HVAC replacement project. I learned that the installation of the smaller units up on the roof, they're going to start next week, and it'll take about 4 weeks to install. There's 2 larger units that we're still waiting on the arrival of that equipment, but that's going to happen sometime in February is what we're thinking. Then the Crescentville Road, State Route 4 to 747 improvements. The catch basin replacement work began earlier this week. The sewer lining work that's going on concurrently with that project That's going to be wrapped up by then next month. So that work's going to continue through, pretty much throughout the winter. In the Tri-County Parkway Sidewalk Extension Project, that the second reading for the resolution for the construction funding is going to go before you guys tonight. Then we also are, the design's about 60% complete. We had a field review meeting last week, and hopefully get those project plans wrapped up by towards the end of the year. And that's all I had.
Ms. McNear?
Thank you, Mr. President. Springdale Lake Drive restoration, the part that the Attafiber and their subs did is terrible, but I can tell you the work that my husband's done on our yard is beautiful. So you can tell I'm not happy. We've spent money on it, and he spent an inordinate amount of time redoing the work that they messed up in our yard. So now we also have to deal with the fact that the neighbors around us that didn't do any work themselves, that they just, accepted the work that Attafiber did, and now they have weeds everywhere. We have to now undo the work that, those weeds are blowing into our yard. So not happy that we've had to spend time and money to counteract what they've done. So please pass that on.
I will.
And I won't stop passing it on either.
You shouldn't.
All right, Rental Program Committee, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
All right. Communications, Ms. McNear, are there any communications this evening?
Nothing this evening, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay. At this point, we'll open the floor for communications from the audience. Is there anybody in the audience like to address council?
Hello, my name is Katie Wells, and I live on Bernhardt Court. I came up because I heard mention of an event that happened earlier today at the rec center, like a State of the Union-like event. Was that something that was open to the entire public, or was it just a Chamber of Commerce and Business event?
It was not open to the public.
Okay, cool. Is it something we can request to get an update on ourselves, any of the presentation and documents?
Mr. Braun?
It's my understanding that it's not a city-sponsored event, that it's the chamber. So I guess if you were wanting to request, I don't think you could, but I could always say you could reach out to the chamber and ask them if they recorded it. I don't know if they did. They don't. So I'm being told they don't, so.
Okay. Do you guys know when the public of Springdale might get an update from the developers as well? No?
Ms. Weisskopf?
Are you talking, like, which developers specifically are you wanting
The
to?
artisan, they were mentioned, right? Like they
Yeah,
spoke.
they were not there. They were just
Okay.
mentioned
Yeah.
that because of, it's the same thing that we've spoken in open
Yeah.
meeting about, was because of funding, inflation and interest rates, and the
Yeah.
lead time on everything right now is out of control.
Right.
So that was all that was said about them in general. Everything
heard
that
it.
was said was what was said here.
Yeah, I got excited when I heard updates, so I didn't
I
know if we had
understand.
any more updates that I
No.
could get. Okay, perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, still any communications from the audience? Second call, third and final call, we'll close communications from the audience. At this point, we'll move into ordinances and resolutions. First off this evening, we have ordinance number 36, 2023. It is the second reading, so Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 36, 2023, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and clerk of council, finance director to enter into an agreement with the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners to administer the Community Revitalization Grant Award for the installation of sidewalks along Tri-County Parkway in the city of Springdale. Whereas the Hamilton County Board of County Commissioners has established a grant funding resources for cities, villages, and townships within Hamilton County for 2023 called the Community Revitalization Grant, CRG program. And whereas interested local governments could apply for funds to implement community and economic development plans, spur other development projects, remove blighted properties or conditions, and/or promote economic development. And whereas the City of Springdale, the city submitted an application for an economic development project including installation of sidewalks along the south side of Tri-County Parkway from Northland Boulevard to Princeton Pike to provide better connections and accessibility to bus stops and employment centers in the City of Springdale and region. And whereas the city seeks to enter into an agreement with the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners accepting the grant funding available through the Hamilton County Community Revitalization Grant Program. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that it is hereby declared necessary and to the best interest of the City of Springdale to enter into an agreement with the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners in connection with the Hamilton County Community Revitalization Grant Program. Section 2, that the Mayor and Clerk of Council, Finance Director are hereby authorized and directed to execute the attached agreement for and on behalf of the City of Springdale with the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners under the terms and conditions listed in the attached agreement, which is deemed to be part of this ordinance, as if fully set forth herein, and when so approved and executed, shall be in full force and effect. Section 3, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
All right, thank you, Ms. McNear. Council, you've heard the reading of Ordinance 36, 2023. This is the second reading and can be enacted upon this evening. What is your pleasure? Motion second. Discussion? All right, Ms. McNear, you poll council.
Mrs. Gantos? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. Ordinance 36, 2023 passes with 7 affirmative votes. Next up is ordinance number 37, 2023. It does include an emergency clause. Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 37, 2023, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and clerk of council, finance director, to make the payment of employee retention incentives to full and part-time employees using the federal pass-through American Rescue Plan Act grants received from the Ohio Department of Public Safety and Ohio Office of Budget and Management in recognition of their extraordinary service and continued retention, and declaring an emergency. Whereas in 2021 and 2022, the City of Springdale was awarded funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, which could be used for a variety of purposes, including the payment of salaries and other payments to employees in recognition of the risks they endured serving the city during extraordinary times, and funds to ensure employee retention continues in order to provide necessary and essential services to city residents. And whereas the City of Springdale's police and fire departments applied for and were awarded a grant from the Ohio Emergency Management Agency, ARPA, First Responder Retention Incentive Grant, the state EMA grant, which was used to make retention payments to all current police officers, police clerks, dispatchers, and firefighters equal to 10% of the employees' 2022 annual base salaries up to a defined maximum and inclusive of the employer's required share of any payroll liabilities. And whereas City Council hereby accepts the funds from the state EMA grant and authorizes the payment of the retention bonuses to all eligible police and fire department employees using the state EMA grant funds consistent with the formula provided for by the state EMA grant. And whereas in order to recognize the efforts and retention of all other eligible city employees who will not receive a payment under the state EMA grant, the city will use a portion of the ARPA recovery grant funds to pay a commensurate retention incentive to other eligible city employees. And whereas the retention payment shall be paid to all eligible city employees within the time limitations established through the state EMA grant. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, Council hereby accepts the funds from the Ohio Emergency Management Agency, ARPA, First Responder Retention Incentive Grant, and authorizes the payment of the retention incentives to all eligible police and fire department employees consistent with the formula provided for by the state EMA grant. Section 2, council further authorizes the payment of retention incentives by the mayor and clerk of council, finance director to all other current full-time and part-time employees using a portion of the city's other ARPA recovery grant funds commensurate with the percentage under the state EMA grant, exclusive of all additional compensation earned for the overtime, holidays, and shift differentials, and inclusive of the employee's required share, any payroll liabilities, and as further clarified in Section 3 of this ordinance. Section 3, the retention incentive shall be paid to eligible city employees who were employed by the city in a full-time or part-time capacity on or before June 17, 2022, and are currently employed with the city. Section 4, this retention incentive grant fund shall be calculated, accepted, dispersed, and reported in accordance with the grant guidance published August 2, 2023 by the Ohio Department of Public Safety. Section 5, elected officials, members of boards, committees, and commissions, and seasonal employees of the city are not deemed eligible for retention incentives provided by this ordinance. Section 6, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 7, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law. Section 8, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2D, 3D of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for said emergency is to execute the agreements within the state of Ohio and make disbursements to the employees in accordance with timelines contained in the grant guidelines.
All right, council, have heard the reading of ordinance 37, 2023. It does include an emergency clause. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All right, seeing no lights, Ms. McNear, your poll council.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup?
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. Ordinance number 37, 2023 passes with 7 affirmative votes. Next up is ordinance number 38, 2023. It likewise includes an emergency clause. Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 38, 2023. An ordinance authorizing the mayor and clerk of council, finance director, to enter into an agreement with Jake Sweeney Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram for the purchase of 2 2023 Dodge Durango Pursuit AWD V8 vehicles and declaring an emergency. Whereas the state of Ohio has advertised and received bids for the purchase of vehicles, and whereas Jake Sweeney Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram is equal to or less than the best bidder with a price of $87,912 for the purchase of 2 2023 Dodge Durango Pursuit AWD V8 vehicles. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that the city of Springdale accepts the state's vehicle specifications and agrees that Jake Sweeney Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram is equal to or less than the best bidder for the purchase. Section 2, that the mayor and clerk of council, finance director are hereby authorized to enter into an agreement with Jake Sweeney Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram in the amount of $87,912 for the purchase of 2 2023 Dodge Durango Pursuit AWD V8 vehicles for use by the city of Springdale Police Department. Section 3, that the clerk of council, finance director is hereby authorized to pay Jake Sweeney Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram a sum not to exceed $87,912 for the purchase of the 2 2023 Dodge Durango Pursuit AWD V8 vehicles. Section 4, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 5, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall be effective immediately upon its passage. The reason for said declaration of emergency is the need to execute the agreement prior to the expiration of the bid to ensure the purchase amounts.
All right, council, have heard the reading of ordinance 38, 2023. It does include an emergency clause. What is your pleasure? Motion second, discussion. Seeing no lights, Ms. McNear, poll council.
Mrs. Gantos?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. Ordinance number 38, 2023 passes with 7 affirmative votes. At this point, we'll move into old business. Is there any old business to bring before council this evening? Ms. McNear?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do ask for a little bit of indulgence. I do have a long document that I would like to read this evening. So tonight, I would like to take some time to discuss the temperament of the meetings over the past year and the contentious atmosphere. Before we get that, please indulge me for a bit of a personal history lesson. I started my service to this city in the early 1970s as a 15-year-old at the rec center. Yes, it will be forever the rec center to me, and I don't care what Mayor Norris thought. It was initially named the rec center, so it's always going to be the rec center to me. I was paid $1.35 an hour below minimum wage to work in the basket room. Many of you are probably saying, what the heck is the basket room? And it is long gone, but that is where people stowed their street clothes when they changed to their swimsuits. Not a glamorous job, and actually was a pretty gross job, but I learned how to be a good employee, work with the public, take on increasing levels of responsibility, working in the office, the party rooms, the concession stand, teaching ceramics, gymnastics, and anything else that was asked of me. Does this sound familiar to those who have started their career there or who have children who have? I learned how to live a life of service in Springdale, which I did as a coach, as a Springdale PTA volunteer, treasurer, president, Springdale committee member, council member, president of council, clerk of council, finance director, member of Princeton Scholarship Committee, chair of Princeton School Reunions, and more positions of leadership and responsibility that I learned right down the street. I learned about Springdale elections at Princeton High School as a junior in trigonometry class. Odd, I know, but my teacher, the elected clerk of council, was being challenged by an upstart, Doyle Webster, and we know how that turned out. I'm grateful for that opportunity and proud to have served my community. I've done this to be an example to my children and my grandchildren because service to my community is a privilege and an expectation not to be taken lightly. I had a 45-plus year professional private sector career and a 30-year elected career. Now let me make myself perfectly clear. I am not running for any political office. My aspiration is to be a professional grandmother, the best gig ever. The pay is abysmal, but the benefits can't be matched by any organization. I'm bringing this up tonight because I would like to end my years of service in harmony and enjoy the time I have left up here after 3 decades versus dreading the constant barrage of negativity I feel up here. Every meeting we have, there are 2 opportunities for communications from the audience where the residents can share their thoughts or concerns on any topic. You know, in many cases, there are administrative requests which are handed over to our administration team to address. There's been a lot of frustration from the residents that the council members don't respond to these requests. It's been explained that it is outside of our area of expertise or responsibility, and many times it just escalated, frustration from the audience. The administrative questions can be handled outside of council meetings during business hours. It has escalated to the point that the residents feel they aren't being respected, and that's because elected officials aren't responding to their questions. I hope you're nodding when you're hearing me saying this. So, frankly, the questions are repetitive and are getting more disrespectful and louder at each meeting. And I can tell from my perspective only. I'm not speaking for anybody else up here, but I've taken a lifetime to learn how not to react to negative, rude, or inflammatory comments. And I can see the frustration on the audience's faces when you get no reaction. But what do you expect? We hear the same thing every meeting. We truly don't know what you want. And I can imagine by now you're probably starting to get pretty riled, but stay with me for a few minutes. Kathy Utra came to council and spoke a couple of meetings ago, and I've known Kathy a very long time. We worked on volunteer groups when our children were young, and she nailed it. You want to know why council is frustrated with the things that you scream at us every meeting? You should read what Kathy said about earning respect. She was aggravated with the mayor. She told the mayor that she earned respect by her and her husband's service to the community, just as we did, everybody up here did. And I'm not going to read word for word what Kathy said, but I've got the words up here. And I can say it again if you want, but I'm not going to go into it. The bottom line is, we shouldn't have to count who did the most volunteer jobs. We should respect each other as human beings, as neighbors. You don't have to agree with everyone, but the repetitive of nature and the abusive tone isn't conducive to who's right or who's wrong. But do we have a real issue that can be resolved? Or do you just merely want to vent your frustration on someone with an audience? I'm truly not trying to fan the flames, but trying to understand the anger, because there is anger displayed. No resolution suggested or issue stated. We're not going to solve it here, and I don't want to debate it. This is just food for thought. Council meetings are business meetings, not picket lines or rallies where we scream or curse at each other. Let's just agree you detest us, distrust us, you want to embarrass us, cause chaos, fill in the blank at whatever it is that we want, other than how awful we are at every meeting. Stop wasting everyone's time. You feel that you aren't respected. We don't either, and we earned it with decades of service to the city. If you have a legitimate issue that we can assist, please bring it forward. But let's please come to an agreement that the few people in the audience that speak every meeting are dissatisfied with the people on the dais, and the elected officials on the dais don't understand the anger and what you want. The city spends thousands of dollars on legal fees, IT, and other experts' fees, and wastes employees' time pulling public records. If there was something illicit, it would have been blasted everywhere. This is money wasted that could be better spent on improvements to our infrastructure, on new rolling stock. Please stop this wasteful practice. There are no hidden agendas. I sit here and I have people who are my children's ages admonishing us to behave a certain way. And then I read what they say on social media that I would never say about them or anyone else. And every meeting I have to listen to how the elected officials should behave better. Believe me when I tell you, I've always held myself to a higher standard. And if you can't take my word for it, call my sons. They will probably buy you a beer and talk your ear off about how rough it was growing up with a mom who is dedicated to doing the right thing, following the rules, and being held to higher standards. We are now in an election phase for the next 3 months. I'm retiring from public office when my term expires at the end of November. I don't have any skin in the game other than I've lived here in Springdale for 54 years. I lived here with my parents, as has my husband. We raised our family here. My grandchildren are here, and extended family. Some of them are in the room right now. I want Springdale to remain a great place to live, work, and recreate. We can't do that if we are at odds amongst ourselves. We live in 5 square miles. We're likely to see each other at the store, at the rec center, at school. We can't hide from each other. We are not Washington, D.C. or Columbus. We are neighbors, and people sitting beside me aren't infallible, but they devoted their best efforts to make it a better place too, if you agree or not. It breaks my heart to see the awful things on social media written about Springdale. It makes me wonder, why would people want to live in such a horrid place? Things that are said by people who grew up here, whose parents were huge contributors to the city, or people who are new to the city who have no idea the contribution that were made to the city, but perhaps they will learn. For the next 3 months, I encourage and charge everyone on the floor and the dais to create the behavior we experience every meeting and exhibit professional behavior. No name calling, no condescending behavior, and no campaigning at the meetings. Now, I'm not asking everyone to be best friends. You continue to hate people in the room just as you did when you walked in here tonight. You can't be in a position of authority without earning enemies. Do you think people on the dais always agree? Nope, we sure don't, and we can still walk out of here at the end of the evening and be friends, or at least be friendly. For my closing statement this evening, I'm going to tell you a true story that happened about 30 years ago or so, when a neighbor called to tell me a new family moved into the neighborhood that was different than the rest of us, and asked, what are we going to do? And I said, go make a batch of cookies, go over and introduce yourself. Different can mean many things, and what it meant then, it doesn't apply now, because different is ever changing. So tonight I'm going to live those words again. Hi, I'm Kathy McNear. Neighbors, please help yourself to the cookies, and welcome to the neighborhood. Thank you. And here's the cookies. So please, everybody, let me have some cookies. And please, let's act like neighbors, and at least say hello and smile, and please, let's be friends. Thank you.
Still in old business? New business? All right, meetings and announcements. Ms. Weisskopf?
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning Commission will meet on Tuesday, October 10th at 7 p.m. in these chambers.
And Mr. Jacobs?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Springdale Board of Health will meet on October 12th, adjacent to these chambers.
Ms. Gantes?
Board of Zoning Appeals will meet Tuesday, September 26th at 7 o'clock in the, oh, Jeff is shaking his head.
Sorry, I was going to buzz in and say the meeting I announced last week, I believe, was canceled.
Oh, well, never mind. Who used to say that?
Mr. Yule?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to echo Mr. Coleman's announcement, the Civil Service Commission will meet Thursday, October 5th at 2 p.m. in the council conference room.
Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just bragging on our Health Department Director, Matthew Clayton, and I'll butcher the organization, but essentially it is the state health department liaison with regard to the state legislature as well as the governor's office. But he was elected a director here recently with regard to that. So I think it's kudos for him and for the administration as well.
Okay, at this point, we'll move back to communications from the audience. Is there anybody in the audience like to address council for any reason?
Hello, it's Katie Wells again. I'm not going to rewrite my information because I just spoke earlier. So I know you were nodding at me and you were addressing a lot of what you said to me, and you had a little bit under 8 minutes to say what you had to say, and I only have 5. So I want to make sure that I try to hit on a lot of what you said. There's a lot to unpack, a lot of stuff that wasn't true, a lot of stuff that I agree with. I can't really speak for a lot of the other people, but I can speak for myself and what I've experienced. And again, it's a lot to unpack, and it's not really something I wanted to discuss while I was here. It could have been something you could call me on. Please let me have my time. And it could have been something you called me on. I've offered my phone number to a lot of you numerous times to talk to me about things. But again, I've said it once and I'll say it before, the way you speak to people up here and the way you hear information, it really does matter. And it kind of creates that feeling that people are just not being heard. We don't feel like we're really welcome. We feel like we have things to say. We really don't know the right processes even. We don't know how to find the right information, and it's a learning experience. I've learned a lot. So kind of backtracking, I've learned a lot. I wasn't really involved in local politics. I was young. I grew up in Springdale. My grandparents built their house before 275 was over there. I remember being a kid and watching parades, watching Doyle Webster go down the street in his convertible with flags and candy, and it was so exciting, and I bought my house in Springdale so my kids could have a similar experience. I think all of us here want the best for the city of Springdale. I really do, and I really wish we could be neighbors and neighborly and not mean to each other, which is exactly why I got involved in council and I started coming to meetings. Because a while ago, there was a new community center engagement session where the public was invited to come and learn about the potential of our rec center move. And I actually got a call from someone who works for the rec because they knew I grew up here and I spend a lot of time at the rec center, like, hey, you should come to that. Awesome. And then I realized there wasn't a lot of communications going out to the public about this meeting we were having about our rec center. And I was like, whoa, what the heck? Like, nobody knows this is happening. I have to help share the word. So I decided to put it on Facebook. Like, okay, let's get it out to as many people as we can, as quick as we can. That way all the people can come and learn about what's happening. And when I went to put it on Facebook, I went to Facebook. So, excuse me, it makes me very upset that I'm even in this situation, and I didn't want to do this today. But I went to Facebook, and we had a Springdalian group. I've been in it for eternity, and I went to share it there, and it was blocked. And I was like, that's really strange. Like, we should all know about this. And then I found out that it was the mayor's daughter who exclusively ran the group. So I was confused. Like, why wouldn't we want to share this information to the world? Why wouldn't all of us want to come? So I tried to share my own little flyer that I put together, like, people come, please come. Let's hear about our new rec center. And I ended up being blocked from that group, and I was just fed up with what was happening. So I went to the engagement center, and I was so happy to see so many people came. And it just kind of seemed like it was more of a sales pitch, and I won't get too deep into it, but I know a lot of people were upset about it. And after the engagement center was over, we all asked lots of hard questions, and that's part of the job, right? When you serve for the city, like, you're always gonna have hard questions. It's not always gonna be sunshines and rainbows. It's gonna be difficult. And after the meeting was over, and I know a lot of you saw it, and I know a lot of you spoke with me on this, the mayor's wife came up to me upset, and she was screaming in my face about how terrible of a person I was. And I'm like confused, because all I was trying to do was invite people to come to this engagement session. And I had no idea why I was being treated that way. And then I kept coming to council meetings, and I kept getting pushback from the mayor and his family and his friends. And I didn't know what to do, and I was recommended by a council person to call the police station because of the harassment in person, to track it, and it just didn't go anywhere. It was a dead end. And things that were said about me on social media by the mayor's family, and just the digs that I noticed, that I really became vocal, not just for me, but when I saw other people being dragged in the mud. I quickly realized from discussing with numerous residents that there's been this weird atmosphere created where people don't feel welcome. And I think that it's really coming to a head now. And like I said, I can't really speak for a lot of people. There is a lot to unpack here, and I will be more than happy to have a conversation with anyone on anything I've experienced. And I've offered it once, and I'll offer it 1,000,000 times. You all can call me and discuss this. But I know I am not the only one who is fed up with the way we feel we get treated. We feel like a nuisance. We feel like when we ask information, and it was even said on the dais that it was a dumb question. There is never a dumb question. You should always care about your people and them wanting to learn and get involved, and you should never block that. You should want people to come to meetings. You should want people to come here and ask questions. Sometimes they're going to be hard questions, and you're not going to like it, but that is what happens when you serve people that live in this city. And I totally agree with you, Kathy. I want it to be neighborly. I do. But I don't know if that's ever going to happen until this weird vibe and the way that some of the people up here treat others changes. And you're right, there is an election coming up, and I really hope it changes. Because there's a lot of people that would love to be here, and they have told me that they do not come here because they don't like getting dirty looks from the mayor's family. They don't like to be talked down to when they're up here on the dais from everyone saying sideways comments to them. It's just, I know you guys know. I know you all know. You are all aware, all of you. People are fed up. And I created a Facebook group because I was blocked from the only other one, and I felt like people needed to be heard. They just need to be heard. They just need to be respected. We can be neighborly to each other. We can get that back. And I'm going to end that there, and if you want to call me, you can. Thank you.
Still any communications from the audience? Second call. Third and final call. We'll close communications from the audience. Mr. Hawkins, we'll go to you for an update on legislation still in development.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you review your internal memorandum, item number 1 was addressed with ordinance number 36, 2023, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and clerk of council and finance director to enter into an agreement with the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners to administer the Community Revitalization Grant Award for the installation of sidewalks along Tri-County Parkway in the city of Springdale. That passed the 7-0 vote. Item number 2 was addressed with ordinance number 37, 2023, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and clerk of council finance director to enter into administer the Ohio EMA First Responder Retention Incentive Grant and use the city ARPA funds for other eligible employees and declaring an emergency, and that passed the 7-0 vote. Item number 3 was addressed with ordinance number 38, 2023, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and clerk of council, finance director, to enter into an agreement with Jake Sweeney Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram for the purchase of 2 2023 Dodge Durango Pursuit AW all-wheel drive V8 vehicles and declaring an emergency. That passed the 7-0 vote.
Okay, and staying with Mr. Hawkins, to recap of legislative items requested for next council meeting.
There are none listed unless there's anything from council or the administration.
Mr. Yule?
Thank you, Mr. President. The only thing I know that we're currently working on is the finalization of the spec and build-out of the fire department's tower. So once we get those numbers, we'll bring that before council next month.
All right, we have item 16 before us.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Council's adjourned.